What are the key opportunities and challenges in creating value through generative AI in businesses today?
Yeah, and I think the way to answer that is because not everyone may know what even generative AI is,
Right.
and I think that's good place. If you're thinking about where the value is, the first place to start is to understand what this technology is about. Because where a lot of companies go wrong is they say, well, that's a hot technology, let's start using it, instead of, okay, we have problems to solve, let's find a technology that best solves that problem. So
Right.
generative AI is has actually been around for decades, but the and what they mean by generative is that it creates content. Um, and the reason I say it's been around for decades is that we've had chatbots since the 1960s that generates content. But the modern idea of generative AI is based on something called the transformer model, and that came out about 2017 through a paper from Google researchers. The paper was called "Attention is All You Need," and what it there's a couple basic ideas behind the transformer model, and that is one, you use huge amounts of data, training data, and we're talking like trillions pieces of it, a whole internet, for example, as an example. So you take a lot of data, and then you use these deep learning models that takes that data and finds patterns in it. So, and the way the patterns work is just like in your iPhone, where when you start typing words in your text, it'll suggest the next word. So this is what that transformer model is doing, but on a huge scale. And it's done it in a way that really hasn't been done before, with a lot of accuracy. So it's taking all that information and finding probabilities for that next word. And then it'll find the probabilities for the word after that. And then before you know it, it starts creating this content. So you start interacting with it, and it seems like, oh my God, is this a person? Is this real or not? So that's what has become what is known as a large language model, or LLM. Um, and so, uh, and then there's also multimodal uh, generative AI, where it's about creating images or sound and things, and those are based on different models, but it's all comes under the umbrella of generative AI. So where the opportunities lie is with LLMs is word-based type, generative content. And so it could be anywhere from, and we've seen this with ChatGPT. It could be, writing a tweet, writing a blog, writing a research report. A lot of that takes a lot of time in the corporate world, and it can do that. It can summarize information. We always have to read so much information, and we don't have time to read it. But the computer and generative AI can go through that. That saves a ton of time for people. Foreign translation. Um, uh, Samsung has a new phone out that does real-time translation using generative AI. A friend who used this technology in Japan, and they work perfectly. Solves a lot of problems there. So with a traditional LLM, it's really about solving those problems about creating content that would normally take a lot longer for people to create. And there's a lot of content that is tedious content. That why spend a lot of time creating that? And some of that content is computer code. Some of the earliest examples of generative AI is using these systems to create, JavaScript or C++ code and things like that. And given the shortages with tech talent, that these types of systems can be huge in terms of productivity. So, so if you're looking at, as a company, looking at, how can I use generative AI? Those are the things: is creating content, summarization, creating code, and those are just kind of on the LLM side. It also could be like chatbots where you're interacting with other people and doing it in a way that seems human. And then on the multimodal side, you can create images, which I don't know Photoshop, but you don't need to know Photoshop anymore to create great images. That saves a lot of
Right.
time. So those are
Right.
the kind of the things that you can do with this technology.
Yeah. Another thing that every company should think about is, do they have good data in order to use these systems? Because if they don't have, they're really behind, and it will be very hard for them to utilize any kind of these like technologies, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's off-the-shelf, ChatGPT. You don't need data per se. You can for more sophisticated systems. There are vendors out there that um, you know for some applications you don't need to have that data. But if you're creating a chatbot based on your products, or doing something where you're creating product descriptions, or things like that, then you definitely need data. Or if you have HR, for human resources, you have certain medical plans, you have certain employee handbooks and so forth. Those are particular to your company, to your industry. So you would want to have the data for that, and that's a challenge. It's the technology is new, so you do need some expertise to work with that data and implement that into the generative AI. There's these systems called RAG and vector databases and all that that require some data science expertise, and a lot of companies just don't have that. But over time, we're going to see systems that make it easier to use whatever data you have for these
Yeah.
applications.
So if you're not using a very generic high level capabilities like what you have in ChatGPT, and you want to make it specialized into your domain, you need to have some kind of data in order to make it, especially for, let's say, lawyers or for doctors or for your specific companies and clients. And most people, when they think about generative AI, I guess that ChatGPT would be the first one, but there are others, like the Google Bard, I think it's called Gemini already, and Watson from IBM. And they're all very big models trained in like lots of data in order to give you good answers or summarizations or conclusions or even predictions, what needs to be done. And as you said, many companies, there is this very big hype that everybody's going to use AI and the competitor is going to use AI and they're going to be staying behind. But actually, they need to understand what is the need in their internal systems or external, or what could they sell to their customers in order to really understand what is the value for them.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, anytime you're in the early phases of a technology revolution, a lot of companies, try to reinvent the wheel. They don't understand the technology, so they go down these rabbit holes, and they wind up spending lots of money and wasted time on things that don't move the needle. And their competitors that really are focused on solving real use cases, will zoom ahead of them. So we're at that point. It's a scary time for companies. That's why they're scrambling. But I do think they need to sit back a little bit and evaluate this technology, and not go crazy with it, because it can wind up doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I think that another thing that needs to be considered is, everybody knows the benefits of what could be done, but not many people know all the calculations and how much it will cost you in order to use this system, to train them and to really use them afterwards, especially if you're going to dedicate some kind of a feature or capability to your end customers, and then it's going to be used heavily. What does that mean on the cost? And could you really create value that is higher than this kind of cost, right?
Yeah, I think that's underestimated, is the cost. One